This song is for all those people out there who just don't understand what archaeology is all about. Nothing worse than being an archaeologist and having someone come up to you and say, dude, you must be into dinosaurs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Archaeological Fantasies YouTube video. We are still taking apart Graham Hancock's television show, Ancient Apocalypse. And this is episode, I believe, 6 that we're going into. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing already. This is the episode where Graham Hancock gets denied access to Serpent Mound, and then proceeds to throw a fit during the show, because that's what man-childs do when they're told no. I do compare his fit to the fits that Scott Walter will throw on his show. Actually, he hasn't had a show for a while, but Scott Walter is renowned for throwing little temper tantrums on the show and then keeping them in the video and posting them. Well, I guess airing them for everyone to watch. So, okay. So yeah, this is the episode where Graham Hancock tries to connect the majority of prehistoric America to his lost civilization somehow. It's a direct tie back to his book that he put out, which I believe is called America Before. And in that book, he's basically trying to walk back a lot of statements that he's made in prior books, because he gets called a racist a lot because of the problematic theories that he comes up with that he cannot understand. Like, I think he is physically incapable of seeing the problems with what he says, which is part of the problem. But so anyway, he's trying to tie prehistoric Native America and the ancestors of most of the native tribes in the U.S. back to either some kind of weird hybrid of his lost civilization and normal humans, or I believe in the book he claimed that they worshipped the lost civilization. And in the book, he tries to reposition Atlantis in the United States. And in this episode, he tries to tie the possibly not real comet impact from the Younger Dryas to a location in the United States. And there's no reason for it. So there's that. It's weird. Yeah, so that's the episode as we go into it. And I've tried to keep these, I really am trying to keep these to about a half hour. My reactions for each one of these videos was around an hour and a half for some of them. So yeah, I'm trying to cut these down. You're obviously not seeing every reaction I make. But yeah, so if you guys like this kind of video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And yeah, let's go see what Graham Hancock is going to tell us about Poverty Point and Serpent Mound.
The few sites that survive may be critical in establishing the possibility of a lost civilization. Sites like this one, known as Poverty Point. It gets its somewhat unusual name from the plantation that used to be on this spot.
True.
Just 15 miles west of the Mississippi River in northeastern Louisiana.
Also true-ish.
For a long time, this was thought to be just a scenic hill rising up out of the farmland.
No, they pretty much knew from the beginning that Poverty Point was some kind of something. They knew that it wasn't just a hill. They didn't know what it was. But Poverty Point's been a disputed land for a long time, actually. I think people forget that in the United States, like all the way back to Thomas Jefferson's time, people were recognizing that these monumental land things and the hieroglyphs, come on, you can do this, the mounds and the megaliths that we find throughout the United States, they always knew that these things were somehow tied in with the Native Americans. And the incredibly Victorian idea that a lost race was responsible for it, that, again, is a very Victorian thing. And yes, I am trying to explain to you that his ideas are incredibly old and he's just rehashing them and making them sound fancy. But there wasn't a whole lot of dispute that these things were attributed to either the current Native Americans or the ancestors of the Native Americans. Like that has always been something that the majority of people have accepted. You can find writings of people talking about things like the lost Jewish tribe, or we didn't really get Atlanteans until after Ignatius Donnelly, but you can find writings from people who are speculating about lost civilizations actually being the creators of these mounds and stuff. But for the majority of sane published literature, even during that time, it was attributing these things to the Native Americans or to their ancestors. We just didn't know anything else beyond that. So, like, most of these they did believe were like burial mounds for stuff, and a lot of these we're finding they are not. So, you know, that thing changes and all that, but I'm sure we're not going to talk about any of that. I'm sure we're going to talk about star alignments and something stupid.
But this isn't just a hill.
Never thought it was.
Archaeologists no longer dispute that it's an immense man-made earthen structure, today known simply as Mound A.
Poverty Point.
And when the surrounding area was found to be littered with clay artifacts and human figures, archaeologists realized that Mound A is part of a much larger ancient complex.
Climbing Mound A is really worth the effort. You get a perspective up here that you don't get down at ground level. What I notice immediately is how flat this land is. If you remove the trees, and I believe the ancients did that, you have a perfectly flat horizon in 360 degrees all around you.
I'm not really sure what evidence he has to support that claim, but I mean, why start now? Start providing evidence for your claims now. Good news, everyone.
But this is not some kind of defensive structure. So what is it?
Never thought it was.
Even from above, it's hard to get the full picture. But we have a good idea of the original layout of the site. And it's like nothing else from the ancient world. Mound A likely originally stood as high as 100 feet, anchoring a 43-acre plaza, with 6 concentric ridges, each perhaps as tall as 6 feet, and leveled off at the top, creating a half circle with a diameter of 3/4 of a mile, broken up by a series of aisles, like some kind of amphitheater. And scattered nearby are no less than 6 massive man-made mounds, labeled by archaeologists simply A through F.
What do you want us to call them? Robert, George, and Fred?
3,700 years ago, long before its builders farmed the land or kept livestock.
We're going back to the simple, unsophisticated, mud hut-dwelling hunter-gatherers again? Therefore, there's no possible way they could have built Poverty Point. Therefore, it must be a lost ancient civilization. That's not really how evidence works, but, you know, whatever.
Why?
Cahokia's like this, too.
No documents or traditions.
Why? Dude, you just explained how immense the site is. Why would you go through the effort of building something that's roughly the size of a small city, a small modern city, and then abandon it? Like, that's dumb. You're gonna stay there. You're gonna live there. You're gonna continue to build there because it's where you live. Why is this difficult?
All around allows you to observe the rising and the setting of the sun and the moon.
Ah, yes. Archaeologists at no point have ever acknowledged that ancient peoples were able to again observe the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars with their own eyeballs and thereby recognize patterns and thereby plan around it. We've never, ever recognized that about anyone ever. Like, as far as we're concerned, people were basically just, you know, blind and deaf and incapable of any kind of thinking until around about the time that whatever lost civilization that we're about to hear about came along and touched them on the heads, and suddenly those features upon our faces and our heads developed instantaneously, and suddenly we as a human race noticed that there is a burning ball of something in the sky that moves daily from one end to the other. Going to go back to the show now.
If you stand at the eastern edge of the oval space at the heart of the plaza, the summer solstice sunset falls directly in line with Mound B, the oldest mound. And from the same vantage point, the winter solstice sunset falls directly behind Mound E. Move over to the western edge of that same inner oval, and you'll find that the summer solstice sun rises directly over Mound C, while the winter solstice sun rises directly over Mound D.
I just want you to look at the alignments that he has proposed. And also go back to the beginning where he's talking about those ridges. If you compare what he was saying about the mounds and the ridges, those ridges would technically be too tall, I do believe, for you to have seen the rising and setting of the sun on the horizon. Like, they created their own blockage. So that doesn't make sense. The other part of this that doesn't make sense is the locations that he's claiming you would have to stand at in order to witness the equinoxes. Logically, they don't make sense. It's like he just, and I've said this before, any 2 points on a line will connect. That's why usually when you draw a line in mathematics or something, you want 3 points. But I mean, I can literally stand in a yard and turn around on the summer solstice and I'm going to see the sunrise. That's how this works. The sun rises, it's going to rise. You can make an alignment with anything. That doesn't mean that there was an alignment.
They were created over the course of hundreds of years, spanning generations of ancient Americans,
Okay.
kept tweaking their position and size over time.
If you can acknowledge that this site was inhabited for as long as it was inhabited, and you can acknowledge, as you have in past episodes, that alignments of things change over time, then why is your mind fucking blown over the fact that this site is as old as it is and it has multiple henges throughout the area? Like, if they really were using these to track things, would they not have to move them periodically to keep on a true course with it? The inability of Hancock to even give human beings this much credit bothers me.
Yet mainstream archaeologists are reluctant to recognize astronomy of any kind in Poverty Point's wood circles.
That's bullshit, but whatever. Straw argument.
Here, I don't think they make sense.
Why should the people who lived here and created this place, why should they not have been interested in the sky?
I'm not saying they weren't.
No.
I bet they were.
Okay.
Again, he's doing this thing where he's putting words in people's mouths and then they tell him, no, that's not true, and now he's going to continue to roll with it anyway. But you say that, they weren't interested in the sky. No, I didn't say that at all. Well, people here, they weren't interested in the sky. Wait, I didn't say that. Well, yes, but the people, they weren't interested in the sky, as confirmed by this guy behind me. I didn't say that. That's exactly what's going on here.
But so what do you think the circles were used for?
We don't know. We don't know yet if they were used for astronomy purposes or not.
God damn, we don't know something? Holy
Ancient
shit.
cultures were very fixated upon the sky. That
See?
notion isn't in itself
See?
disputed. Archaeology tends to regard it as irrelevant. I think that the reason is, in part, because most archaeologists just don't understand astronomy at all.
Okay. Sure.
I'm not claiming that Poverty Point was created by the lost advanced civilization
Aren't you, though? Aren't you? I mean, I know those exact words didn't come out of your mouth, but it's kind of like when Von Daniken says, oh, they asked a question. Yeah, but wasn't it really a statement?
looking for. But I'm interested in the origins of the sophisticated astronomy and geometry that were deployed here.
So you are saying that.
Architectural, earth measuring, and astronomical knowledge was inherited from earlier times. But inherited from whom? And how much earlier?
I'm not saying the ancient Americans living here weren't capable.
Is this his new thing? I'm not saying, but you have said these things. You have written them in books. They are in black and white print on acid-free paper or on a digital download. I can get a PDF or an ebook right now where you have made these claims. I literally have Before America where you have made these claims. Why are you trying to soft shoe backpedal in this television show? Do you not think that people have read your books and are now watching your show? Like, do you think the only people who are going to watch your show are people who are completely ignorant to who you are? Even though throughout the entire series, you've been playing up on your own ego and reputation in order to bolster the credibility of your arguments? Okay, but you're not saying that. I'm not saying that.
of discovering and incorporating a gigantic earthwork shaped into the form of a living creature.
We're not actually sure about
400-meter long
that.
snake. It's called Serpent Mound.
It is called Serpent Mound.
Starting from its
Hard.
tail,
I
7
missed
bends
it.
in its body wind their way to the head, where gaping jaws appear about to engulf a separate oval earthwork. Even
So fun facts about Serpent Mound. Yeah, it is called Serpent Mound. That's true. We're not entirely sure it actually represents a serpent, and the head of the serpent, the thing swallowing the other thing, we're not entirely sure what that is supposed to represent as well. It has been, for the longest time we've called it Serpent Mound for obvious reasons, but there have been some suggestions that it's not actually a serpent and that it's some kind of processional promenade or something like that. But again, it's up in the air and there's not a lot of evidence to support one way or the other. So we kind of just go with the fact that it's a serpent because it looks like one. But I just want people to kind of be aware that it's not written in stone that Serpent Mound actually represents a serpent. It could be something else. But, for the most part, we kind of run with the serpent idea. I just want you to know that there's a possibility there because in this show, we're going to really hit that serpent thing pretty damn hard because he's already trying to tie all of these sites together because they all have some kind of snake or serpent effigy on them. Like all of the different sites, he's made a really big point about showing that snakes are part of the artwork or the carvings on all of these sites. Not entirely sure what the end game of this is, but I think I'm starting to see it. And so, yeah, we're going to really hit hard that the Serpent Mound is a serpent because it's really important to his theory that it is. Just putting that out there.
from the air, it's hard to make out all the detail. But by taking into account new discoveries about its original construction and stripping away the trees, we can reveal what the effigy would have looked like in its prime. Serpent Mound extends more than a quarter of a mile, from its jaws in the northwest to its tail on the southwestern corner of the hilltop. Originally, there was a circle of standing stones by the head, function unknown.
Yeah.
Just behind the head, two decorative extensions, function likewise unknown.
There's also, okay, so this is a really good image though. There's also evidence of an extra coil and some restructuring of the coils of the serpent, which is another reason why they're not positive it's a serpent, because it does seem to have been basically re-landscaped at some point. He might go into that. And we don't know why. I mean, this could be fortification. We don't know. But yeah, like there's a lot of strange little things that strange isn't really the word. There's a lot of little things that we're not really sure how they all tie together yet. And so it's still kind of up in the air what exactly Serpent Mound is. But I mean, it does, for the most part, it's serpent-esque. So I have heard a couple people say it's like the Great Cosmic Sperm, but there's no way that it could be. But it is a funny thing to say. So anyway. I have heard the argument that it could be a depiction of a comet, and I'm pretty sure that's where he's going with this, is that this is going to be a comet effigy. I don't think there's enough evidence to support that at all, so I don't think that's not something that we should be touting as fact, even though I'm pretty sure we're probably going to do that in the show. And I could be surprised. We might not be going there. I don't know.
The truth is that nobody really knows how old Serpent Mound is. That date of 1000 AD was based on just 2 of the organic samples taken from parts of the mound that may have been later reconstructed.
Forming my words. So, Hancock doesn't want to accept the dates for Serpent Mound because they were taken using organic samples, core samples, which means they drilled into the freaking effigy. The core samples we were using in an earlier episode to prove things that Hancock wanted to be true. Now, those exact same things are not good enough evidence for Hancock to accept because they don't line up with what he's trying to prove. So even though we do have actual scientific dates for Serpent Mound, we're going to just ignore them completely because that doesn't line up with Hancock's theory. Literally, he just said that. I mean, I know he said it in a fancier way with a British accent, but that's literally what he just said. Also, he's not going to provide any evidence to support whatever date he's going to pull out of his ass. He's just going to say, I have a feeling, or he's going to do that weird thing that he does where he backtracks the constellations to a point where it's where he wants it to be and then claims that it's aligned with something. So I'm just making this prediction now.
Because another archaeologist.
Also, I really just need you guys to understand that there are actual scientific dates for this site, and he literally just said that doesn't matter. Which, what can you prove? What can you provide to this man to prove anything? He literally will not accept evidence.
There's just one problem with investigating my theory.
You don't have
The
any evidence
administrators of
for
Serpent
it?
Mound have decided to ban me.
We've made repeated efforts to get permission to film here, but they denied us that permission
Yep.
on what I regard as ideological and indeed rather personal grounds.
Okay, so we are going to have a Walter movement. I understand that it's very hard for him to wrap his head around why people don't want him near a sensitive cultural site. Like, I get that. I understand that he thinks he's super special and he shits gold, but he's not a scientist. He's not a legitimate researcher, so he doesn't have that going for him. And most of these sites will not let anyone into them because, again, they are sensitive cultural sites. If something happens, if something gets destroyed at Serpent Mound, it's gone. We can't get it back. So they're very protective about who they let into the back room of Serpent Mound because we don't want to lose it. It's a UNESCO site, I think. Double check that one. But anyway, my point is that it's one of a kind. There isn't another Serpent Mound. And yeah, I guess if like someone took a pie slice out of one of the curves of Serpent Mound, yeah, we could probably reconstruct it to make it look that way. But it's not the same. It's not Serpent Mound. It's gone. It's just filtered at that point. And the fact that he will not wrap his head around that, like at this point, I really think he's just being willfully ignorant because it serves his purposes. And like, I understand the ego blow that this must have been for him, but what he really needs to understand is that, honestly, because of writers like him and like Von Daniken and like the other guy whose name escapes me for the time being, their writings over the past 30 to 40 years have encouraged the public to actually go to Serpent Mound and do things like dig holes into it to bury crystals because they think they're going to commune with the ancient alien peoples. There are people who try to steal bottles full of the dirt because they think it has some kind of metaphysical power. There's people who try to break in there because they think that they're going to do like metal detecting and find some kind of, gotcha artifact that's going to prove something to someone. So I'm not saying that they are directly responsible for the vandalism that occurs at Serpent Mound, but I will say that they have contributed significantly to it. A giant serpent-shaped mound is going to attract attention, and people are going to go there, and people are people, and so they're going to do stupid shit when they get there. The fact that they are doing certain specific things tells me that they're being encouraged by the readings and the writings of these guys to go do those specific things. It's not like Hancock went up to a dude and said, you know what you should go do? You should go dig a hole at Serpent Mound. No, I'm not saying he did that. I'm not saying he did that. But I am saying that his writings have emboldened and encouraged people to go do that and gives them a way to justify their behavior. And so, yeah, they don't want you there. That's basically what it boils down to. I'm sorry, but they don't want you there. You've spent your entire career calling archaeologists stupid. Why would they then allow you to come into the site? Like, no. And in general, there's nothing you're going to discover here that's going to support your lost civilization theory, except now that you can't go there and you can't be proven wrong, now you're going to say, oh, well, they know I'm right, and they just won't let me go in because they know I'll just prove my theory correct. Okay. Walk off, man. Take the win, I guess.
Let me read from their email. Our role is to ensure that Serpent Mound's integrity and preservation, both physically and in its...
Okay, I gotta record this one. I'm sorry.
There's just one problem with investigating my theory.
Okay, here we go.
The administrators of Serpent Mound have decided to ban me.
Actually, it is.
We've made repeated efforts to get permission to film here, but they denied us that permission. On what I regard as ideological and indeed rather personal grounds. Let me read from their email.
Ideological,
Our role is to
though,
ensure
but
that Serpent
personal,
Mound's integrity
yeah.
and preservation, both physically and in its historical interpretation, are maintained. Because the presenter of this series, Graham Hancock, proposes a theory and story that do not align with what we know to be true about Serpent Mound, your request is declined.
I actually find the language of that kind of sus. I'm not gonna lie. But again, a lot of that comes down to I don't believe a damn word that comes out of Hancock's mouth, which is unfortunate for him because that could be a true email from the administration at Serpent Mound. Do I believe that they would ban him access because it's him? Yes, I do. The whole idea of them, the whole thing of them saying the truth, we don't talk like that, so I'm very skeptical that that's actually what the email says. I'm sure that's the gist of it, except for that whole the truth part. But yeah, I mean, I can totally see that Serpent Mound administration would not want Graham Hancock there. And clearly he understands why, or else he wouldn't be this livid over it. And it's just like, okay, I will give him this though. If that had been Walter, he would have been throwing his hat on the ground, putting his hands on his hips, cussing out everybody, and just in general throwing a fit. I will give Hancock the fact that he very calmly read the email, and you can tell he's very upset, but he's just now going to calmly walk off camera, and that'll be the end of it. I will give him that. That is the professional way to do it. You can't help but be angry. I understand. But, I would like, just because I'm nosy, I would like to see the entire exchange between the filming crew here and Serpent Mound administration. I'd like to see the whole thing go down via the email and stuff, just because I'm nosy and I just want to see what exactly really was said. Because again, I think the wording that he just read is a little sus. But in general, yeah, I totally see that they were just like, Graham Hancock, no. So, yeah, you can totally see that happening, unfortunately, for him. But when you build your entire reputation around literally calling everyone who works on this kind of stuff an idiot and stupid and that we don't know what we're doing, and, even though we've gone to school for this crap, we clearly are just a bunch of idiots stumbling around picking our noses. When you build your entire career around that for the last, what he said, 30 years, yeah, you're gonna have to expect people to not want to work with you. I'm sure if one of the people or any of the people who have constantly criticized you for the past 30 years came up to Graham Hancock and was like, I'd really like to do a personal interview with you. I don't believe that he would say, okay, sure, come on over. I don't believe he would do that because why would he? I wouldn't expect him to. But anyway, this was a good moment. We're still going to go on and speculate about Serpent Mound, though. Again, I don't know if you guys can see it in the film here. Let me just let it play for a minute.
Word for this so-called mission to protect the interpretation of the site.
I might have to take the... I can't tell if they blurred this, like the television show blurred this or not, but there are public visiting hours to Serpent Mound. Or there used to be in the past. It used to be a public site. I could understand them closing it off to the public to protect it, because again, I'm not joking when I say people have gone there and physically damaged the Serpent Mound itself. So they could be just protecting it, but at the same time, there have been public visitation times even if the administration has said that, like, they don't want him in the back rooms filming shit, that, I mean, unless they physically come throw him off the property, which I don't think they've done, I'm pretty sure he would have told us. You know, he could still go and look at the public end of this, and much like Walter, he's just choosing not to. Unless, of course, they close the place off to, you know, the public being able to get in there, and then, you know, is what it is. But if there are public hours and he could go in as a member of the public, then, you know, he's just choosing not to do that and choosing to have a moment. I will just say a moment. It's really not that big. But he's choosing to be upset about the fact that he can't go be special while filming at Serpent Mound. So a lot of these guys will do this stuff. They'll be like, oh, they're keeping me out. And it's like, they're not, though. They're just not letting you go to the back rooms where you want to be. You can still go to the public site. You can still go see the public things. I mean, you went to Poverty Point. You were standing on Mound A. Clearly, you know how going to a public site works. You know? Anyway. Go.
Is, of course, censorship. And what more effective way for archaeologists to censor and restrain and crush opposing views than to deny access to archaeological sites?
Big archaeology at work again.
It's by no means the first time this has happened.
This, unfortunately, is systematic and consistent behavior amongst archaeologists. They do practice censorship.
Okay, I take it back. He is going to have a moment where he just, like, throws his head on the ground and stomps his feet and throws a fit. I'll be the first person to admit, people say really unfortunate things about Graham Hancock. I probably have too. It's a two-way street. It's not like you're, you know, cordial.
So what exactly is it in this theory of mine that's deemed so objectionable? Quite simply, it's because I dare to suggest that the idea behind the design of Serpent Mound goes back to a time much earlier than 300 BC. More than 10,000 years earlier, to the end of the last ice age. And for me, the proof of this lies in one of its most stunning attributes.
Where is your evidence? I feel and I believe are not evidence. I feel like 73 is the perfect temperature for the world to be at all year round. My friend who lives in the Philippines gets cold at anything underneath 75, so I'm pretty sure they would disagree with me. But clearly I am correct, because I feel that 73 is the perfect temperature. Therefore, 73 is the perfect temperature. I don't need to prove it.
One that mainstream archaeologists don't like to acknowledge. Because again, it involves the sky. If you overfly Serpent Mound on the summer solstice, around June 21st, you'll immediately notice that the jaws of the serpent are aligned almost directly to the point where the sun sets.
The organization which runs the site has allowed an enormous number of trees to grow up around the head of the serpent. I think they believe it provides shade to tourists.
I get that a lot of people don't understand preservation. It's kind of a tricky, it's a tricky thing. The fact that Hancock thinks trees are a conspiracy really makes me laugh. You know? A lot of times when you have sites like this and like you see the tree there that's actually inside the mound, the damage that could potentially be done to the effigy by removing that tree is greater than the damage the tree is doing by being there. So the decision to leave trees on or near the effigy a lot of times is made because to preserve the site, it's best to just leave them there. I get that some people don't understand that, and I'm not trying to be mean about it at that point. Like I said, preservation is kind of confusing sometimes. So I just kind of want people to understand when you go to places like this and you see foliage and trees and plants where you don't want them to be, most of the time the decision has been made to leave them there because to remove them would cause further damage that we don't want to cause.
Instead of asking why the serpent's jaws aren't perfectly aligned to the summer solstice sunset, what if we asked a different question? When, if one takes into account this obliquity of the ecliptic, did the gaping jaws and the setting sun line up perfectly?
So now he's going to do that thing that he does where he's going to insist that the date of Serpent Mound is where he wants it to be, because he's going to do this reverse astronomy thing where he's going to move the sky back to the point when things aligned the way he wants them to have aligned, and that clearly must be the date. Because that's scientific.
Turns out it wasn't 1,000 years ago, or even 2,300 years ago, when archaeologists insist Serpent Mound was first constructed.
Insist.
Serpent's Mound was exactly
really
centered on the
pissed.
sun, around 12,800 years ago,
He's
at
really
the end
mad.
of the last ice age. When the ridge on which the Serpent was built itself occupied an extraordinarily significant spot. At the very peak of the ice age,
I know I keep bringing up Scott Walter, but didn't Scott Walter come out here for something? I don't think it was actually him looking for... Maybe it wasn't Walter. Maybe it was one of those other crackpot shows. But anyway, didn't some other group come out here and they were like, this exact spot, and they were like, yeah, if you stand in this position and lift your leg up in the air and wiggle your ear and squint, this particular outcropping of rocks looks like a face or something. I'm sure we're going to get into it. Maybe we won't, because that's not really his thing. But I do remember them trying to tie, I think it was the Giants guys, In Search of Giants. I think that's what it was. I think they came here and they tried to claim that there is the face of a giant carved into this area, and that like the snake, the head of the serpent on Serpent Mound actually like faces the giant. I really need to dig that one up. Anyway, I just remember this area being like in another show used for a completely different purpose. So it's just kind of interesting that he's there, and I can't wait to see what he's going to say about it.
Time when we know there was a global cataclysm.
So a global cataclysm is occurring while people are frantically building all of these megaliths and the Serpent Mound so that they could specifically leave a near incomprehensible date that only Graham Hancock could interpret. I want you to process that, please.
Big enough to have destroyed an advanced civilization.
There's no advanced civilization.
again, I'm
you
reminded
still
of
have
Göbekli
yet to
Tepe,
provide
where figures
any
of creatures carved
evidence
into
for
one of the
that.
most spectacular pillars seem to depict the position of the stars at the summer solstice during the time of the Younger Dryas.
Nope. No, they don't. They don't. Nice try, but they don't. And you didn't prove it. You didn't even provide, like, the beginnings of evidence for this one.
It's no accident, in my view, that the Serpent's solstitial alignment also speaks to that same cataclysmic epoch.
Prove it, and you having feelings about something is not evidence. Again, I can feel like cats are the best pet to ever have ever, and therefore all other pets are inferior. But someone else might think dogs are cool too, and clearly they're wrong because I feel like cats are the best. Therefore, cats are the best. And cats are the best, but
But why a serpent?
I don't know, man. Why was there a
Its
scorpion?
relevance, I think, are numerous Native American myths and traditions in which giant serpents are directly associated with cataclysmic earth changes.
No, there's not.
There's an ancient legend of the Iroquois, whose domain at the height of their power extended
Okay,
deep
you've
into
got
Ohio. The villain of
You have one legend from one tribal group, the Iroquois. Not knocking the Iroquois or anything, but one Native American is not all Native Americans, and there are a lot of tribes in the United States. I know that's confusing for people who don't live here, but the Iroquois are not the only tribe of Native Americans, nor have they always been the only Native American culture in America. I just want to point that out for you. But go on, reinterpret their mythology for me.
the legend is a giant horned serpent.
First off, the artist who's doing these little story inserts here, I really like their art style. I really do. It's really pretty. I like the Senia. I don't know. Anyway, I like the color scheme. I like the way it's, animated and that kind of stuff. It's really cool. I have absolutely no fucking clue what the hell's going on here. I don't know why the serpent has deer antlers. I don't know why the creature, the person being sent down from the sky gods or whatever he's calling them, is the winged and armored angel of Saint Michael. Like, I other than he's really trying to, as most people try to do with these pseudo arguments, trying to claim that Native Americans are Nephilim and therefore they're descendant from angels, which usually get tied back into being giants. But yeah, this imagery has nothing to do with Native American imagery anywhere. I don't think there's any Native American imagery I've ever seen anywhere where it's a helmeted, armored, winged, angel-looking guy with a spear. Now, I have seen St. Michael and the Dragon, and I have seen medieval paintings from Europe that depict angels that way. But I've never seen it in Native American artwork. Any of the tribes. Just, again, I do like the art style.
At sites that invite us to look to the heavens. Why?
None of these serpent things that he has shown are pointed towards the sky. None of them. Not a single one that he just showed. The closest thing he could probably claim is that the ones going down the sides of the steles at Göbekli Tepe, their tails are pointed at the sky. I don't know why he hasn't pulled in any Chinese myths about dragons. You notice we haven't gone to China at all. We haven't even gone to that side of the continent. We're just pretending like that part of the world does not exist. Even though it's like rife with these serpent-like dragons that he's desperately trying to claim are in prehistoric artwork all over the other side of the planet. That particular void is interesting to me.
Themselves, deep in the heart of Cappadocia, in modern-day Turkey, which is where I'm heading next.
I mean, Turkey and Istanbul, anyway, that's the farthest east we've gone. We also have we gone into Africa yet? Into the African continent yet? Trying to think of all the places he's been. The holes in his ancient lost civilization people's locations are interesting to me. And I would like to know why. And maybe I just haven't combed through all of his books, because I haven't read every single one of his books, just his most recent ones. And so maybe in one of the earlier ones, he's mentioned why he doesn't look at that part of the world. Does it just not hit his radar? Does it not exist? He doesn't think it's old enough? I don't know. Anyway, that was episode 6. Let's recap. So in episode 6, we learned that Hancock doesn't like scientific dates because they don't line up with his beliefs. We learned that Native Americans don't know what astronomy is, and so they couldn't have made the alignments at Poverty Point without assistance. We just kind of have to take his word that those alignments are true and accurate, even though I'm 90% sure they're not. And we learned that the administration at Serpent Mound doesn't like Graham Hancock. Big surprise there. And what else did we learn? Oh, we learned that Graham Hancock is the only person on the planet who is able to interpret ancient astronomical alignments, and that archaeologists are incapable of seeing the sky. We don't know the sky exists. And what else did we learn? Something serpents. We're doubling down on this serpent thing. And I'm sure by episode 8, we'll have an explanation as to why Hancock thinks serpents are so damn important. Because it couldn't possibly be that every single one of these cultures he's talked about have serpents in the areas where these people lived. Like that couldn't be the connection. Because as we all know, serpents are actually mythological creatures that do not exist anywhere except in the imaginations of the lost civilization. And therefore we only know serpents exist because of this genetic memory that we have from this lost civilization. I'm being incredibly sarcastic, and if you can't pick up on that, I pity you. But anyway, we didn't really learn anything new in episode 6. We once again have a lot of speculation and a lot of I feels and I believes, but we don't have any evidence whatsoever. Even if Hancock had been allowed to go into Serpent Mound to film, I don't think he would have provided any evidence for any of the claims he made about Serpent Mound, because there's no evidence to support anything that he's claiming. We had several straw man arguments created in order for him to be able to argue against himself, and that's pretty much it. Nothing new has been presented. He's been repeating and rehashing his argument since like episode 3. It's just we're moving around the planet, and then he just basically says the same thing in whatever new location we're in, which is, I'm assuming, what we're going to do when we go back to Turkey. So yeah, I guess we'll just get on to episode 7 and see what new culture we're going to call simple and unsophisticated. Okay, if you've made it to the end of the video, which hopefully you have, you would be seeing me here, go ahead and leave a... Oh, we did serpent already, though. Go ahead and leave another serpent. Ooh, and an egg. A serpent and an egg in the comment section down below. If you've made it this far, go ahead. You may as well give the video a like. I mean, you've made it this far. And yeah, so... I hope that people were able to watch that episode with me and understand why Hancock's theories are such an issue. And I know there are some people who comment on my videos who can't see that issue, who can't see the problems with Hancock claiming that prehistoric peoples are incapable of creating anything. Also, Graham Hancock's language around prehistoric peoples, mere hunter-gatherers, simple hunter-gatherers. I don't understand why people don't hear how that's insulting. Would you like me to call you a mere human being, a mere white man? I'm pretty sure he'd get pissed off if I said that. Pretty sure. Yeah, so anyway, Graham Hancock was denied access to Serpent Mound. That is true. Graham Hancock was denied access to the back rooms of Serpent Mound. He was not told that he could not be at Serpent Mound. He could have gone during public visiting hours at any point and walked around the public space of Serpent Mound. He chose not to because it made his story sound better, but he wasn't denied access to the overall area that everyone has access to. He wanted access to backstage stuff, and he wanted to be able to like touch artifacts and look at whatever it is that they keep in the back rooms back there, which I'm assuming are artifacts, documentation, maybe certain sections that are a little bit more fragile that need to not be disturbed by people constantly. I know he goes on some tantrum about trees and something about preservation. Or maybe that was another video of his I watched. The problem with the trees thing is, yes, there are trees on Serpent Mound. No, that is not a sign of bad preservation. To remove the trees at this point would actually damage the mounds. So leaving the trees there is actually the best course of action. So it's not a grand conspiracy against... Oh, I think it was Walter that was doing that. It's not a grand conspiracy against any of these fringe people that there are trees growing on Serpent Mound. They were not planted there specifically to thwart the alternative archaeology theories that are out there. They're just trees, and it's just better for the Mounds to leave them there. Those were the things I wanted to kind of hit on. That, you know, Hancock could have gone into the public spaces if he wanted to. He chose not to, or maybe he did and he just didn't film it or share that part of the film because he thought throwing a fit outside of the Serpent Mound area was somehow better. Okay. And then proceeded to kvetch about it for the rest of the episode because there is some conspiracy against Graham Hancock specifically. Just him. No one else. Anyway. So yeah, he could have gone and seen he could have gone to visit Serpent Mound. He chose not to. That was his decision. That was not a decision that was made for him. Yes, he was denied access to the back end of Serpent Mound, but most people who request access to that, unless they have a legitimate research purpose for being there, most people get turned down for that. So that's not a personal slam on him, even though the letter did say that. Actually, I still to this day would like to see the actual letter that he got, because the wording doesn't sound like something professionals would say in a letter like that. So I think he was having some like artistic license when it came to what the letter actually said. Anyway, so there's that. I did also want to address the trees. However, I think the trees were actually a Scott Walter thing. It's been a while. So yeah, if you've made it this far and you have put up with my ramblings, don't forget to leave a snake and an egg in the comments down below. Like and subscribe. And yeah, see you guys in the next one.